Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm your host, Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. The Big Ten on Saturday night on Big Ten Network has got an interesting game between the 3-1 Indiana Hoosiers and the 1-3 Nebraska Cornhuskers. Two teams that people probably would have thought would be in different directions, but Indiana right now is doing a little bit better than Nebraska. But let's break down this game and see which team I think is going to win because, again, records don't always matter, and this game is at Nebraska. Tom Allen is in his sixth season as the Indiana football coach, and he's done pretty good, especially for Indiana because Indiana is a team that always struggles, and a lot of people don't ever think they're going to win, and it's hard to win there, and it's hard to get players there, but he's done a really good job. To start this season, they did beat Illinois 23-20 in a game that they were losing, and then Illinois gave up a touchdown to Indiana at the end, and they won. And then they beat Idaho 35-22 in a game that they were losing at half, but then they came back and won. So that was a good win there. And then they beat Western Kentucky in overtime 33-30. And I picked Indiana to beat Western Kentucky and Illinois, but it was very close, and they almost lost both games. But last week, I picked Cincinnati to win, and that was the case, and they lost 45-24. Connor Bazelak, he threw for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks, so he played decent, but he had to throw a lot of passes just to get those yards. Cincinnati played great defense on them. Sean Shivers had 79 yards rushing and a touchdown. Cam Camper had 126 yards through the air. So they have a decent offense, but 24 points wasn't enough to beat Cincinnati. Indiana's defense usually is a stalwart with Tywan Mullen and Cam Jones and other players like that, but they just could not get it done. They were giving up way too many points to Cincinnati, but Tom Allen has said that he's going to try to do everything he can to make sure their defense plays better because he knows that they can play. Tywan Mullen had 5 tackles against Cincinnati and an interception, and you had Cam Jones. He had 3 tackles, but it was not enough to win. Cam Jones is a great linebacker, and he is kind of following in the footsteps of Michael McFadden to be the head of the Indiana defense. But again, it just was not enough for Indiana to win, and they lost 45-24. So they are 3-1, and they are a better football team this year than they were last year with all the transfers that they have. But still, they could not beat Cincinnati, and they're still 3-1. On the Nebraska side, Mickey Joseph. He's the interim coach for Nebraska since Scott Frost got fired, and they are 1-3 to start this season. And Nebraska's had some issues, but they have talent on this team. They lost to Northwestern 31-28 in Dublin, Ireland, in a game that a lot of people thought Nebraska would win, including myself, and they didn't win. And that was a big loss for Nebraska because that was not good for Scott Frost. It got them off on the wrong foot, and it was a game that they should have won. Then they beat North Dakota 38-17, but they were not very convincing in this game, and they was tied at half, but they did come back and win just kind of like Indiana did against Idaho. But then they lost to Georgia Southern 45-42 on their own field, and that was the game that got Scott Frost fired. You can't lose to Georgia Southern, and Georgia Southern scored 45 points on their defense, a defense that has a lot of talented transfers on the team, and they just could not get it done. And then with now Scott Frost fired, and you got Mickey Joseph as the interim coach, they lost to Oklahoma 49-14. In a game that they weren't even competitive in. And at least last year when Scott Frost was the head coach, they lost by 1 score, something he was very famous for doing, losing every game by 1 score, but they got blown out 49-14. Now, Mickey Joseph has said that his team is energized and he's going to do everything he can to get them to win this game against Indiana because he feels that Nebraska can beat Indiana. And the fans, hopefully for them, think so too because they got a sellout, something that the athletic director of Nebraska thought couldn't be done because they had some seats still available, but this game is going to be a sellout crowd. And you know Nebraska football fans, they always have a great home field presence. Quarterback Casey Thompson had 129 yards and a touchdown against Oklahoma, but again, they weren't even close in this game, and they benched him in like the third quarter, put the backup in, and he didn't do any better. But he can play. He played at Texas, and he was a good quarterback, but again, 129 yards and a touchdown is not going to win you many games, even though it was against Oklahoma. Running back Gabe Irvin Jr., he had 60 yards, but their two starting, or not starting running backs, but their starting running back and their backup running back that plays basically almost starter minutes, they didn't play as well. Anthony Grant and Yant, of backup running back, they both didn't play very well, and Gabe Irvin played fantastic in the minutes that he played, but it was kind of at the end when Oklahoma was giving up more yards. Wide receiver Trey Palmer had 92 yards and a touchdown. He played well, but again, they got to get the ball more to him because he's fantastic, and they're not getting the ball to him enough. They need to throw the ball more. I think Nebraska can do it if they play better this week. Defensive end O'Shawn Mathis had 4 tackles against Oklahoma. He was a defensive end transfer from TCU. He's a fantastic player. They got a good defense. They have good defensive players, but they still gave up 49 points to Oklahoma. Defensive lineman Stephon Wynn Jr. had a tackle. He's a transfer from Alabama. They've got talent on this defense. And defensive back Marcus Buford Jr. had 6 tackles. So again, Nebraska's got a lot of great players. They have a lot of talent. And Indiana has talent too, especially from the transfer portal. Both teams loaded up on the transfers. They've done fantastic in the transfer portal. But who's going to win this game? It's at Nebraska, and I want to pick Nebraska. But with Mickey Joseph being the interim coach, I don't know if he can get it done because they were not convincing at all against Oklahoma. They played poor, and I want to pick Nebraska because I think they can win this game at home, and the odds makers seem to think that as well, and they have them favored by 6. But I think Indiana's got more confidence still being 3-1. I think both teams need this game, and I think Tom Allen knows the team needs it more if they're going to make a bowl, and Nebraska's season's almost shot anyway. If they do get this win, it will help Nebraska, but I just don't think they're going to get it done. I think Indiana's going to win 35-28. I think Nebraska can win. But again, even with the home field advantage and all their talented players, I just don't think Nebraska's going to be that energized because of the interim coach. Even though Mickey Joseph is trying, their season's almost over already, even though they could win and still make a bowl. But I just don't think they're going to be as energized as Indiana, and I think Indiana's going to go in there and win 35-28. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about this Indiana-Nebraska game and who's going to win and why, and I will see you next time.